I'm a Christian. I take a particular view on what marriage should be. That's how I voted, and I haven't changed my mind on that. But the Conservative Party should be a broad church, and I'm delighted to have Jamie here. Jamie and I have a different view on these matters. Jamie's the convener of the LGBT group in the Scottish Parliament, and we can disagree about these issues, but be part of the same team. I don't know, Jamie, if you want to add something to that.
You're very welcome to come to my wedding.
I'll be delighted.
You can do the after dinner speech, perhaps. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
In my last video, I gave Murdo Fraser a very, very hard time for coming out as being pro-abortion. This video is slightly different in tone, a bit more of a mixed message, I would say. Now, Murdo's statement there at the beginning, that was in answer to a question from a hostile Daily Record journalist who said to Murdo, your voting record is you voted against civil partnerships, you voted against same-sex adoption, you voted against same-sex marriage, surely you're anti-gay. That was the gist of the question. And Murdo replied, as you heard. So I'm just going to look at the things Murdo said one by one and give my perspective as well. Well, first of all, civil partnerships. Now, the Scottish Family Party doesn't have a policy on civil partnerships. It's not our policy to repeal them, to do away with them. Now, what's my personal view on them? Well, I've got reservations, I think. I mean, they've now been expanded to cover heterosexual couples as well. So they offer a sort of marriage-light alternative to real marriage, a marriage-light alternative that doesn't require sexual fidelity. So I'm not too keen on it from that point of view. Now, the idea of having some system to bestow some legal rights on people whose lives are closely entwined, I can sort of see that side. That's positive. But the other thing with civil partnerships, as they were introduced, is they're obviously effectively an endorsement, a state endorsement and recognition of homosexual relationships, which I don't think was a positive thing for reasons I will come on to afterwards. Now, Murdo didn't have anything to say in reply to that issue. So the fact that he voted against civil partnerships, well, I might well have done the same at the time as well. So let's move on. Right, same-sex adoption. Murdo Fraser voted against this in the dark and distant past in the Scottish Parliament. Now, when he spoke about it at the time, the quote I've seen from him, he said something like, some people think the children really need a mother and father figure ideally, so same-sex adoption isn't ideal. That was the sort of thing he said, which you often hear from particularly conservative politicians. They say what they think, but they don't say it as what they think. They say, some people think. Some of my constituents have written to me expressing the view that. So I think it was actually what Murdo Fraser thought himself, but he was expressing it in an arm's length sort of way, which I don't think is really ideal. But anyway, so was it right? Do kids need a mum and a dad ideally? Well, yes. Male and female role model, very important. All the evidence points in that direction. So Murdo Fraser was absolutely right. But since then, he said that he's changed his mind on the issue. Now, I'd love to speak to Murdo Fraser about that. My question to him would be, what evidence have you seen that's caused you to change your mind? What evidence was your original viewpoint based on? And what new evidence has caused you to change your mind? And I'm virtually certain what the answer would be. The answer would be, well, there sort of isn't anything. There hasn't been any new evidence. It just changed because it's gone along with fashion, I would suggest. Scottish Family Party policy when it comes to adoption, preference to a married man and a woman. Because the needs of children are paramount. The institution of adoption does not exist to give adults what they want. Does not exist to give children to people who want children. It primarily exists to give children what they need, which is a loving family, to recreate as close to the ideal as possible of being brought up by their own mother and father. That's not possible. So being brought up by a new mum and dad is what they need, ideally. So that's Scottish Family Party policy. Right, moving on to the big issue now. Same-sex marriage. Murdo Fraser stuck to his guns and said he didn't agree with same-sex marriage. So well done there. All the pressure was to deny that, but he did the right thing. So well done, Murdo. Now, what he said there was actually pretty well identical to Kate Forbes, what she said in her leadership election campaign. Now, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because Kate Forbes said she would have voted against same-sex marriage, that's made disagreement with same-sex marriage a bit more socially acceptable, a bit more of a respectable view, not quite so controversial. Now, I think it's a very interesting question. We'll never know the answer to it. I wonder if Murdo Fraser would have still been saying this if Kate Forbes hadn't said it. Because that's the way it works. the more people are saying the same thing, the easier it is for other people to agree with them. So maybe if Kate Forbes hadn't said that, Murdo Fraser wouldn't, but we'll never know. We'll never know. But it's interesting the way Murdo Fraser presents this. It's a bit similar to the way Kate Forbes did as well. He presents his disagreement with same-sex marriage as though it's sort of an arbitrary religious belief. It's a bit like, a dietary requirement, or, you fast on certain days, that sort of thing. So it's as if his underlying message is, I'm a Christian, Christians are a bit weird, we've got these funny beliefs, please tolerate us, religion's a protected characteristic, put up with me, and you should be able to accept that Christians have some funny beliefs and you should be okay with that. That's the sort of line he was taking in the Kate Forbes style, I would say. What he definitely is not saying is same-sex marriage was a mistake and we should repeal it. He's definitely not saying same-sex marriage as an institution is something that's been harmful to our nation. He's not saying same-sex marriage is problematic for moral reasons. He's definitely not saying a problem with same-sex marriage is it leads to harmful consequences in our society. He's not even going close to saying any of those things. Now, he prefaces his comments here by saying he's a Christian. Now, if you look at traditional Christian teaching on sexual relationships, it's very clear that homosexual relationships are immoral. Homosexual sex is wrong. And, quite seriously, it's quite a serious issue when it's dealt with in the Bible and in traditional Christian teaching. So same-sex marriage is problematic for Christians who accept traditional Christian teaching because it endorses, celebrates, incentivizes, and normalizes what Christians of biblical views, traditional Catholic views, whatever, see as a sin. Now, there's other issues as well. Looking at it from the political point of view, there are other problems with same-sex marriage. As the Scottish Family Party, we uphold traditional marriage. Man and woman fall in love, get married, have children, stay together, committed to each other in a lifelong relationship to bring up those children in a stable family home with their biological mother and father. That's an ideal that we want to incentivize and maximize in our society. So in the light of that objective, that promoting same-sex marriage, well, that doesn't perform the same function at all. So our view is that the state does not have an interest in recognizing and endorsing same-sex marriages. Now, the other thing with same-sex marriage is it communicates an institutional, a state, a national, societal endorsement of same-sex relationships, which also has its negative consequences, because same-sex relationships tend to be correlated with a lot of negative outcomes in terms of physical health, mental health, addictions, relationship instability, etc. So generally, going down the road of same-sex relationships often doesn't work out well for people, and same-sex marriage presents the opposite message, that the things can work out perfectly well. This is something our society accepts and even encourages. So, as the Scottish Family Party, we would want to present a positive case of our vision of human sexuality and family life, and present an alternative philosophy to the one dominating in our culture and in the political establishment. That's what the Scottish Family Party does. We try and persuade, we try and make sense, we try and present our case, rather than saying, please tolerate us, sort of begging for mercy, saying, well, we've got some weird views, but please still accept us, but don't worry, we won't actually try and change anything, which is a very different line to take. Now, I would say to Murdo Fraser and to Kate Forbes, because they both said that they don't agree with same-sex marriage, but I think they're both saying that they wouldn't want to try and change it. Now, I think that's inconsistent. Like for Kate Forbes, for example, if you would have voted against it, you vote against it because you think we'd be better off without that law. So if the law passes, surely if we'd be better off without that law, surely your view should still be that should be repealed. So then there's an inconsistency in saying I did vote against it, or I would have voted against it, but I'm not against it now. I wouldn't want to repeal it now. I think that doesn't quite make sense. And then we have Jamie Green chipping in. Jamie Green is a gay conservative MSP, and he invites Murdo Fraser to his gay wedding. I don't know if that's real or hypothetical. I don't know. But from Murdo Fraser's point of view, if he's coming from the point of view of traditional Christian moral teaching, then a same-sex marriage amounts to a couple making a public commitment to continue in a relationship that's sinful, to continue in it for the rest of their lives. And in inviting someone to a same-sex wedding, you're inviting someone to come and celebrate this commitment to remain in a sinful relationship permanently. And Murdo Fraser says he would be happy to do so. I can't quite see how that all fits together. And also he said he would go to join them to celebrate their what he believes is not a wedding. Again, I find it difficult to see how this can be a coherent, consistent position that he is adopting. So to conclude, I think Murdo Fraser has been faithful in the sense that he's stated what he believes, that he doesn't believe same-sex marriage is actually marriage. He just doesn't agree with that. He stated that, so he's been faithful, but I suggest it hasn't been particularly useful in promoting and explaining and persuading people of the alternative viewpoint that he holds. So he stood up and been counted, but he hasn't influenced public opinion, I think, through that at all. Now, you could reply, or maybe he would reply, look, this is campaign mode. My mission is to get elected as Scottish Conservative leader. Once I got that role, that's the time I could really start making a difference. Well, I think there's a lot of questions about that. But what I would say to Murdo is, if you look at the past, your record in the past, and if you do become leader, what will happen in the future? And I would suspect that it would remain in campaign mode. It would appear to be in campaign mode permanently, avoiding speaking about these issues. So I hope that was interesting and helpful. Do subscribe to the channel. Do get your tickets for our conference on the 9th of November in Glasgow. There's a link. Look at our social media. And thanks for watching.